Are you ready?
I am ready. The time has come.
Okay.
We can tell the truth about Avatar: The Way of Water.
Well, I want to hear. I have spoken maybe a little too much on some other shows about it. I want to hear your and we can just to be clear, it's going to be spoiler free in the sense that we're not going to talk about events about halfway from the
The first
midpoint.
act. I usually go first act.
Yeah. I think first act is fair. Here's what's interesting though. There's a lot of spoilers in the first act. There's things that you're going to hear in the next few minutes that will be considered spoilers that come out of act 1. There's some big things.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, we're not going to talk about anything from the second half of the movie. The trailers for this film have told you almost nothing about the story. Mm-hmm. So, Alan, why don't you give us the first act events that kind of set up the conflict of what The Way of Water is really about, and then we'll get into our spoiler-free review.
Okay, so where we were last left off in the first movie, the Sky People, the humans, were banished off the planet. Off Pandora, and Jake and Neytiri are now in love, and they're having babies. They have 3 babies, 2 boys, 1 girl, and on top of that, Grace Huntington, I think that's her name, Grace Augustine, her avatar, for some reason, it's not really explained, but she gave birth. The avatar gave birth to a girl named Akiri, who I just found out is actually played by Sigourney Weaver in this movie. And so, and then also there was a baby that couldn't be a human baby that couldn't be transported back to Earth. And so that baby named Spider, and he grew up with the Jake Sully family. And life is really good. Everything's going great until the humans show up again, the Sky People. Earth is dying, and they're all coming to Pandora. They're gonna colonize Pandora. And the Pandorans don't like that, and so that's basically the setup for this movie. I don't know. Do we consider, and so basically they're now basically Jake is leading the Pandorans to combat the colonization. They're very effective at it, and so now they bring in a team of elite avatars, one of whom is the Colonel Quaritch, Stephen Lang, who died in the first movie. His soul was passed on to an avatar, and they are now set to assassinate Jake Sully. At which point, Jake, being the father that he is, he's going to protect his family and move his family from the forest to the reef, to the ocean people. And then that's kind of where the story really takes off at that point.
That's. I mean, I'll elaborate on a couple things. Stephen Lang, who plays the command Colonel is it Quaritch? Quaritch. Colonel Quaritch. He's basically an avatar, but what he does is before the events of the third act of the first Avatar movie, he downloads effectively everything from his brain, the knowledge he had up to that point. He downloads to something that is then put into an avatar, and you meet this whole new team of avatars whose consciousness are some of the Marines from the first movie.
Yeah.
And they look like them. They're played by them. And then this Spider character is basically the son of Colonel Quaritch, the human son that he now knows he has. So this is all, it's sort of really awkwardly told because it's not like you learn all this organically. It's like the first 10 minutes of the movie, they're like, okay, here's what's going on. And then it cuts to like, 2 years later, 10 years later. It's interesting.
Yeah. And so I mean, people brought that up last time of, well, how does he have kids? How do they have kids? It's you basically accept it. It happened. There's not a lot of explanation, but we're just gonna have to accept
well, what you learn is on the world of Pandora, your soul can continue to exist in the tree, right? The world. It's like your soul is then absorbed. So it's almost like heaven, right? You still continue to exist. So then Sigourney Weaver's character from the first film is basically effectively reincarnated. I know this sounds dumb. I know all of this sounds incredibly dumb. The way it's explained is fine, and it doesn't matter. They spent maybe too little time on this.
Very little time.
They just kind of tell you through voiceover like how all this occurs so that you just accept it. But once you get to the first sort of 30 minutes of, all the like Captain narrative telling you what's going on, that kind of sets the stage to effectively humans are coming to Pandora to you know to plunder all of its resources because Earth is dying. A really interesting thing, they come there and they just sort of show this in the beginning and you don't really see it later. They can just build whole buildings and cities with these like robots. Like in a short period of time, they can build an entire building with these robots that do a lot of the labor, which I thought was really interesting. So there's a lot of kind of cool world building that doesn't pay off in this movie that I believe is a setup for the future movies, which from my understanding, they shot Avatar 2 and 3 back to back. And then 4, they just completed shooting, talking about the human side.
Yeah. So the 4th one, I believe they just finished principal photography on that.
Of the human side. Then you got to just do everything. Everything's digital.
I mean, as of D23, Cameron showed up on video talking about the fact that that he is working on number 4 right now.
Okay, cool. So that they got a lot of confidence in this, but so this is the setup, right? So you've got, I mean, the main thing is Neytiri and Jake Sully have a family, kind of like 3 kids, and sort of kind of 2 adopted kids in a sense, right? Like in a way, right? And then Sigourney Weaver's character, like that's her face on that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was her until actually a couple days ago.
No, it's I mean, it's her. You can tell, like, it's like her if she was like 12 years old or 11 years old or something.
The hair kind of gives it away.
Right, exactly. So, so this is the setup. But Colonel Quaritch and his team are just out to get Jake Sully. He wants revenge, and he especially wants revenge because the consciousness that was downloaded into his avatar, he's basically the same character, but he only has knowledge up until the point. He knows all this stuff about Jake Sully. So all this downloading occurred right before the big battle in the first Avatar movie. He doesn't know that he was murdered by Jake Sully, which gives him even more motivation when he stumbles upon his dead corpse, his skeleton, effectively. It's, I mean, that was kind of a cool scene. It was kind of a cool scene. Adds more motivation. He's on the hunt. It really becomes like, what it felt like to me was like a Cowboys and Indians, in the frontier, this frontier land of Pandora that so many things can kill you. And I like that as a setup and a conflict and more motivation for the Colonel to go after him by any means and just kill Jake Sully and his family and drive him out of the area that they're trying to plunder the resources from. What it pivots to eventually is, and James Cameron is not very subtle. I mean, a lot of the things I don't like about the movie is parts of the story are just dumb, right? Like there are lines of dialogue that are laughable and unintentionally funny, right? And then there's other stuff that's just not subtle at all. Like, for example, the Colonel later goes on a whaling trip. There's these types of whales on Pandora that have a type of a substance that it's like the unobtainium of this movie. I forget what it's called. Do you remember what it was called?
With the whale or the
whale has this thing where they literally need to
some kind of gland. I don't remember the name of it.
You drill into its brain, you suck this stuff out. You have to kill the whale just to get this small part of it, and then they just waste the rest of it. They don't care, but it effectively stops people from aging. And it's worth millions of dollars if you can get it. So they have these teams of whalers. So these are just mercenaries and freelancers. They're not even like part of the military. They're just there to get this, to get this highly prized substance. So that's your setup. Where the movie gets interesting is when Jake Sully and his family realize they can't live among the forest people anymore. They're driven out to the reef people, and that's where new conflicts arise. Where the story kind of pivots also mainly from Jake Sully and Neytiri to the kids, and how do they, how do these kids who look slightly different, the forest people look different, and they make a big point of this. Whereas
the big one is the Pandorans have 4 fingers,
Right.
and the avatars have 5 fingers, and so Jake's kids have 5 fingers.
Yeah.
And that kind of separates them from all the other Pandorans, and that plays big when they're moved off to the reef.
Yeah. So they're in some ways kind of outcasts because the reef people, the reef Pandorans, have almost like sort of developing fins. They have thicker tails and they make a big point of like, look how different we are. Can we get along? I don't know. And that's when it gets very almost kind of CW, where it's just like it just focuses on the kids. I think it's handled very well. I think that like kids will like this. I think this movie is more for families and children than it is for it's and for normies than it is for
Yeah,
true fans of science fiction. What are your
I,
thoughts
I
on that,
think
Alan?
I think you're exactly right, and I think when the talk is that this movie has to become the fourth highest grossing film ever to make a profit, that was a very smart move to make this movie less about the military actions of the first movie, this whole military colonization tale, and make this a story that is about family and that will appeal to probably preteens, early teens, and to families. Because for some reason, family movies tend to make a boatload of money, and I think that's why this movie will succeed. It's like I mentioned in a review, I find this movie refreshing in the sense of it's just a normal story about a family, and there's slight environmental agenda behind it, but at the same time, I think this movie will have a broad appeal, and a broad appeal that Disney has not done in a very long time.
Yeah, whaling is bad, Alan. Just so
Yeah,
you know,
and I
whaling
think
is
most people
bad.
agree killing whales is not a good thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, like when it comes to James Cameron and agenda, he doesn't say anything too controversial,
Yeah,
right?
I mean he's definitely had agendas in his films.
Yeah.
Very liberal, very progressive agendas. This one just doesn't have it at the degree that his other movies have had.
Well, it doesn't. Well, the thing is, I think it's like dispensed in a way like the agenda never trumps the story
Mhm.
or the entertainment value. And that is to me where I can sit here and list all of the flaws of this movie, and they are plentiful. Dialogue, the story's clunky, especially in the beginning. It takes a long. The running time is going to hurt this film. 3 hours and 10 minutes. Our kids, even though this movie has a really targeting kids, are kids going to want to sit down for this? Parts of the movie felt like I'm sitting there visiting an aquarium.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
this incredible
especially if you're
aquarium.
watching in 3D.
Right. And actually, I'll be honest, I liked the 3D.
Yeah,
I liked the 3D. I mean, it worked. It just worked. So, but 3 hours and 10 minutes running time, I did not like that.
yeah.
It's clearly
Well,
could have been like 220 or 2.5 hours. Then you could have done a
you have to admit James Cameron has a pretty good record with very long movies.
well, and
So we'll see. I mean, that's ultimately it. We'll see how if the runtime really hurts it or not.
I believe the runtime does hurt it already. So I mean, it does hurt it. It does hurt it. Is it gonna but at the same time, I'm looking like at tickets. I'm looking to my girlfriend wants to see it. So I gotta see it. I gotta see it again. Okay. So I've seen it for 3 times.
Well,
9 hours of my life.
I'm essentially forcing my daughter to see it just to see if she sees it the same way I do.
See, she is the right demographic.
Yeah,
I think your
I think so.
daughter, she's
Because she has
teenage,
zero interest in seeing this movie. Absolutely no interest in seeing Avatar.
but it just the sort of like reef people meeting Jake Sully's family and kind of all the problems that causes. We've seen it in a million movies. There's nothing new about it. There's nothing new about oh, a family moving from one place to another. Will they get along with the new kids they meet at school? But that's why I think it works. It's because
Mhm.
it's a story that's been told many times. We've seen it all before. This is
And
a
it's not like
complete,
bullying has been solved. The
yeah,
problem with bullying.
bullying hasn't even been solved on Pandora. There's a lot of bullying of reef people towards Jake Sully's kids and rivalries and kids getting themselves in situations. It really felt like almost like it's definitely a family movie, but
Yeah.
on James Cameron's terms.
Well, that's what I'm saying is the first movie was about the colonizers,
Right.
the evil humans coming to destroy Pandora, and that story is there, but it takes a back seat. It more or less spurs on this story of family than it does about the humans colonizing. I think the next movie will more or less address that rather than this movie.
Gotcha. So look, do you recommend Avatar: The Way of Water, Alan?
I do. I actually like it better than the first one. But it's, again, I tend to qualify these things. I think if you were not excited by the first Avatar, you're not going to like this. And I do think that this movie does skew more toward younger viewers and to families, and so that may be a turnoff to people as well. You're not going to get you'll get some gritty action, some good violence, some thrills, but not like the first movie.
Yeah. And I'll say I recommend it too for the spectacle. But if you did not like the first Avatar, you're not going to like this.
Yeah.
But I recommend it for the spectacle, for the novelty, right? The 3D. This is a different version of the 3D since a lot of the movie takes place underwater. It really is like James Cameron sort of threw in the blender all of his movies: Titanic, Terminator, the first Avatar, The Abyss. He just sort of threw them all in a blender and just put on puree, and then you see influences, especially Titanic, in this. And I recommend it for the spectacle. But all of those things, yes, this is a kids movie, a family movie. But I don't know that I've seen a family movie this year. I mean, I did like the Minions. I thought Minions was sort of that was fun, but that's not a movie about family, right? This is about family. Is the Minions Rise of Gru about family?
I'm trying to
it's not.
Minions always about family. I think it is about family, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, this is, and also just the movie gets points for me because it is about a strong family, a strong father. Fathers, just the idea of fathers or fatherhood has been completely mocked and belittled in nearly everything. We've seen male characters just get completely emasculated on screen.
Jake Sully is not a doofus in this movie.
The movie doesn't do that. The movie does not do that with the male characters.
Yeah. I mean, the boys, they want to be warriors like their father. The girls, they want to nurture animals. So it's playing into fairly stereotypical gender roles, which, again, refreshing.
It's refreshing only because we see it so little in the movies these days. And so the movie gets points for that. I want to hear what you think. We are going to be doing a spoiler review. We're going to talk about everything, including a lot of the things that bug the end. There's some stuff that happens at the end that bugs me a lot. We're going full spoilers on Friday.
I'm still trying to figure out what that is. What bothered you about the ending?
I can't tell you.
I know. Yeah, we'll find out Friday.
Well, I'll find out Friday, but we'll be doing full spoilers on Friday. I want to also know what you think, and we're going to discuss it all. So if you don't care about the movie, obviously you don't care about spoilers, join us on Friday. If you've seen the movie and you want to tell us what you think, Friday is the day to do it.